Victoria Sterling's voice was barely a whisper as she fed me another empty promise, low enough that only the two of us could hear. We had been secretly married for 10 years. Even though she claimed we would officially go public tomorrow, she still didn't dare let the company employees know my true identity today. Her male assistant, Julian Rivers, was standing close enough to hear everything. He feigned surprise, his voice dripping with false innocence. "Ethan, why didn't you call me for the contract signing? After all, I'm your subordinate. I should have gone with you." I knew exactly what he was doing. Interjecting now was his way of trying to steal a slice of the credit. Victoria's smile vanished, replaced by a cold, professional mask. "Ethan, Julian put the most effort into this project. Trying to hog the credit is a major taboo in our company. But since we're going public today, I won't penalize you." She waved her hand dismissively. "All right, don't stand here at the entrance ruining the corporate image. You don't need to sweep the floors today. Just go home." The irony was bitter. With just a few words, Victoria had shifted all the credit for the contract I secured onto Julian. And for me, not being punished was apparently a gift. She was the one who held my hand before the signing, promising we'd announce our marriage to the world, promising to promote me to vice president once the company went public. Now, she was deliberately sending me away to give Julian a promotion and a raise, treating me like an outsider. From the moment I appeared at the venue, Victoria's eyes had been dead calm, as if she were looking at a stranger. There was no guilt, no evasion. I forced myself to face the brutal reality. She no longer had any trace of the affection she held back when we were huddled in that basement apartment, putting all the meat from our meager dinner into my bowl. Snapping back to reality, I nodded numbly and turned to leave, desperate to find the nearest hotel to wash the cake and cream off my face and hair. Behind me, a burst of mocking laughter erupted. "Mr. Rivers, look at Ethan. He looks like a clown. It's hilarious." And he actually dared to try and steal credit from our young prodigy. Mr. Rivers, he must have a death wish. I didn't stop walking, but as I reached a blind spot in the security cameras, someone kicked me hard from behind. The boot slammed into my spine. I pitched forward, hitting the ground hard. My chest seized in pain, and my lips scraped against the asphalt, going numb instantly. "Pity, I didn't blind you earlier." I tried to scramble up, but another kick slammed into my shoulder. Julian circled around to face me, and that's when I saw the baseball bat in his hand. "I want to see how you're going to announce your marriage to Victoria when you're—" Looking at Julian's unhinged expression, the corner of my mouth curled into a sneer. I spat out a mouthful of grit and glared at him. So the mask finally slips. Julian had dropped out of high school. He met Victoria while working as a bartender, and she hired him as an assistant against all protocol. I had tried to persuade Victoria and not to give him heavy responsibilities, but she accused me of being elitist, saying I couldn't stand seeing someone young and hardworking succeed. A functionally illiterate thug was now the vice president. It was laughable. Julian's face twisted into a grimace. He raised the baseball bat high, aiming for my legs. Suddenly, the sharp click of high heels approached. In an instant, Julian's expression shifted. He dropped to his knees. He pulled a crumpled VP appointment letter from behind his back and wailed, "I'm sorry, Ethan. You're right. I'm just a useless thug from the sticks. I can't compare to you. You and Victoria are a match made in heaven. Only you deserve to be VP. I'll resign immediately." His speed at changing faces was truly breathtaking. Sure enough, a second later, Victoria rounded the corner. Her voice grew clearer as she approached. "Julian, I bought the towel you asked for. Wait, what happened to you?" The moment Victoria saw Julian kneeling on the ground, her gaze turned razor sharp. She made an instant judgment, raised her hand, and slapped me across the face. "Ethan, Julian was kind enough to remind me to bring you a towel, and you insult him and force him to resign. This is workplace bullying. Apologize to him solemnly right now." Her hand trembled from the impact. She looked down, saw her palm smeared with cream and grit from my face, frowned in disgust, and wiped it on the pristine white towel she was holding. Only then did she look up to glare at me again. Julian gently took Victoria's hand, staying on the ground, sniffing as he played the victim. "Victoria, please don't blame Ethan. He's a company veteran. He's been here longer than me. It's normal for him to be resentful. I don't want the VP position. Just give it to him. Despite his words, his grip on the appointment letter tightened. My cheek was swollen and burning. I tried to speak, but my jaw wouldn't open properly. I touched my face. It was wet. Only then did I realize the skin on my lip was split and blood was dripping down my chin. By any metric, I didn't look like the bully here. Yet, Victoria stubbornly shielded Julian behind her, demanding I apologize. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. When Victoria was defrauded by her ex, left penniless and severely depressed, it was my companionship that opened her heart again. I started this business with her, helping her become a CEO and rebuild her confidence. She once said she would love only me in this life. Now, she took me for a fool and let her boy toys step all over me. Enduring it only made me angrier. Backing down only made me feel cheaper. I stepped forward and hauled Julian up off the ground. Victoria looked stunned for a moment, then wore a satisfied expression. Ethan, at least you have some sense. Apologize properly to Julian and we'll put this behind us. The next second, I kicked him without mercy. Julian went flying, rolling like a tumbleweed straight into the stagnant drainage ditch nearby. A high-pitched scream pierced the air. He was completely unprepared. He never dreamed I would actually fight back. After all, he had only needed to play the victim a few times in the past to get Victoria to fight with me or give me the silent treatment. I hadn't dared to cross him in a long time. Watching Julian wallowing in the foul ditch, sewage dripping from his hair, looking utterly broken, I finally felt a flicker of pleasure. Victoria, a germaphobe, immediately yanked him out, not caring that the filth got on her expensive clothes. Yet, previously, when I had simply washed my clean clothes with hers, she had frowned, claimed there were bacteria, and threw them all away. It seemed all her little quirks could be attributed to one thing: a lack of love. While they were distracted, I turned and headed home. I showered for 50 minutes, scrubbing until I felt clean. My once handsome face was now covered in bruises, the scratch on my right eyelid looking particularly gruesome. I couldn't help but recall the terror I felt earlier today when my head was slammed into the cake, a drinking straw nearly piercing my eyeball. At the time, everyone was laughing. No one cared about my safety. Victoria had looked completely indifferent. It wasn't until I grabbed Julian by the collar in anger that her face turned cold, scolding me for not being able to take a joke. That scene sent chills through my heart. For 10 years, I accompanied her from obscurity to the stock market launch. She repaid me with pain and disappointment. Since that was the case, there was no need for me to toil for her anymore. The business partners were right. For Victoria to climb so high so fast, she had done plenty of illegal things in the shadows. Back when her ex stole her savings and her unscrupulous boss withheld her wages, she couldn't even scrape together money for her mother's medical bills. Despair drove her to the rooftop. I saved her. Looking into her beautiful dead eyes back then, I had only one thought. I wanted to make her shine again. She said she wanted to be a conscientious entrepreneur to prevent her tragedy from happening to others. So, I gave up my chance to study abroad to build a business with her. But the dragon slayer eventually becomes the dragon. I didn't plan to turn a blind eye anymore. If she could be heartless, she shouldn't blame me for being unjust. I was going to expose her crimes to the media. I wondered if she could still be so self-righteous when her dirty laundry was aired. After gathering and copying all relevant information to my computer, I sent the compressed file to my lawyer friend Marcus. Check this for me. How many years is this worth? Just then, a message popped up in the company group chat from Julian. It was like a drop of water falling in hot oil, causing an instant explosion. Julian had posted a photo of himself and Victoria. In the picture, they were leaning their heads together at a movie theater entrance, holding ticket stubs, looking blissful. Countless lurkers in the group spammed, "Congrats, party popper." Some bold ones even tagged Victoria, asking for a bonus. I smirked. Over the years, I had invited Victoria out countless times, but she always said dating was a waste of life, that the company was at a critical juncture and couldn't function without her. She'd say, "We're an old married couple. Why bother with that useless stuff?" Now, I knew it wasn't that movie dates were a waste of life. It was that being with me was a waste of life. The old me would have been furious, telling colleagues to stop talking nonsense. But now I felt strangely calm. I even followed the crowd and typed a congrats, party popper. Predictably, a second later, Julian posted a panic follow-up. Oops, wrong group. Don't misunderstand everyone. I just happened to buy an extra ticket, and Victoria kept me company. His clumsy attempt at a cover-up only incited more teasing. Simultaneously, Victoria private messaged me. Delete that. Don't make Julian feel bad. It really was just a coincidence. If you hadn't hurt Julian, I wouldn't have needed to comfort him. The coldness radiating from the text made it feel like I was the one in the wrong. 10 years of love. We went from having nothing to having everything. When we started, life was hard. So hard we had to split $1. On New Year's Eve, she bought $3 worth of pork, and we pushed the plate back and forth, trying to let the other have meat. I remember the time I drank until I had severe internal bleeding just to secure a client. Victoria cried and stayed by my bedside, never leaving me for a moment. She wasn't like this, turning a blind eye to me while showering care on a man she'd known for 6 months. I realized my years of devotion were just a joke. Snapping back, I knew the official announcement was tomorrow. I didn't want to tear off the mask just yet. I silently deleted the message I sent in the company group. Victoria didn't notice anything wrong. Instead, she messaged me smugly. Ethan, at least you know your place. I won't hold you accountable for hurting Julian today. I didn't reply. On my chat screen, Marcus, my lawyer friend, sent a question mark. I tapped my fingers and replied, "What if my wife gets into trouble?" Marcus understood immediately and typed back fast. "If there's an agreement, you won't be liable for joint marital debts after the divorce." I smirked, locked my phone, and went to the study to print a divorce agreement. I was just calculating how to get Victoria to sign it when a pair of hands deftly snatched the folder from my grasp. Victoria's long black hair brushed against my shoulder, smelling of fresh shampoo. She laughed lightly. "Working at home? You're so diligent. Should I give you a bonus?" She seemed to be in a good mood, her movements light. Normally, after I beat up Julian, she would have given me the cold shoulder, even if we didn't have a screaming match. Why was her attitude so good? While I was puzzled, Victoria pulled a box for a limited edition handheld gaming console from her bag and gently nudged my arm. "I saw this while shopping. I remember you said you wanted one, so I bought it for you." I sat up straight. When we first started making a profit, I once bought a gaming console to reward myself and relax my nerves. But when Victoria saw it, she smashed it without hesitation, accusing me of losing my ambition to toys. I hadn't touched one since. When things seem this out of character, there's always a catch. I asked directly, "Victoria, just say what you want." Victoria put her hands on my shoulders and massaged them lightly, testing the waters. Julian's family is pressuring him to get married, forcing him to go back to his hometown for blind dates. The company is at a critical point. We can't lose him. I was thinking of pretending to be his wife. She paused, her thumb and forefinger rubbing my collar. That was her tell when she was lying. Then I heard her whisper in my ear, "His family is old-fashioned. They insist on seeing a marriage certificate. How about we get a divorce?" The old me would have gone crazy hearing the word divorce, demanding to know if she still loved me. So, Victoria quickly added, her voice urgent, "Don't worry, we'll still do the official announcement as planned. We'll remarry in a while." I laughed at myself. Victoria could have easily forged a fake certificate with Julian, but she wanted a real divorce for me. No wonder her attitude was so good. She was just afraid I'd make a scene. I nodded. "Okay." Victoria choked back the mouthful of persuasive arguments she had prepared. She looked at me a bit dazed, but without giving it much thought, she pulled a divorce agreement from her bag and said quickly, "Although it's an agreement, I won't short you on the money, but the company is hard to divide. So can we keep it under my name?" She knew this was the only way to ensure she retained absolute control after the listing. I just found it funny. All this effort just to swallow the company whole. This was perfect. I was worried that if the CEO and legal owner went down, the spouse would suffer too. Fine. I reached out to take the agreement from her. Seeing me so compliant, Victoria suddenly became inexplicably annoyed, clutching the paper and refusing to let go. She asked suspiciously, "Ethan, didn't you say you'd never divorce me even if you died? Why now? Damned if I do, damned if I don't." I never realized she was this difficult. I simply said, "It's just a fake divorce anyway, isn't it? I support all your decisions." Victoria's grip loosened. Looking at the bruises on my face, she seemed to think of something, and her eyes turned serious. "Don't worry. When we remarry, I'll transfer 20% of the shares to you. You've worked hard all these years." I nodded, knowing she was selling me another pipe dream. I didn't take it to heart. I'd eaten enough of her empty promises over the years. I took the pen and signed my name casually. As I handed it back, I hesitated. "Can I handle the logistics for the official announcement?" Victoria let out a sigh of relief, her expression saying, "Is that all?" "Of course." The next day, I arrived at the company early, directing the crew to move the best live streaming equipment to the press conference venue. As I was moving recording gear, I saw Victoria and Julian walking over hand in hand, laughing and chatting as if no one else existed. When Victoria saw me, she pulled her hand away as if burnt. She opened her mouth to explain, but seeing the wounds on my face, her expression turned to impatience. She frowned. "Why hasn't that healed yet?" She took a concealer stick from her bag and used a sponge to pat it over my face. After a while, she looked satisfied. "That's better." Julian's face turned green watching this. He forced a smile, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Ethan looks really handsome today, but that suit looks a bit cheap. I happen to have a suit Victoria gave me. I'll get it for you." Before he finished speaking, he pulled out a suit he had prepared and looked at me innocently. "Ethan, why aren't you undressing?" Instantly, everyone around us focused on me, looks of mockery on their faces, waiting for the show. Everyone thought this announcement belonged to Victoria and Julian, and I was just a foil to highlight Julian's youth and style. I frowned. I didn't expect Julian to pull a stunt like this right now. I said coldly, "No need." Victoria couldn't stand seeing Julian lose face. She frowned in dissatisfaction. "Ethan, Julian is right. You look shabby in that. It's embarrassing for the company. Put on." I sneered internally. To Victoria, announcing our relationship was just a transaction to create a loving wife persona and stabilize the stock price. I took a deep breath and said, "I'll go to the restroom to change." But Julian reached out to stop me, grabbing my belt. He laughed. "Ethan, we're all men here. What are you shy about? I'll help you take your pants off." Disgusting. My face went completely cold. I shoved him away and shouted, "Julian, if you like stripping in public, do it yourself. I don't have that fetish." People around us chuckled. Instantly, Julian's eyes turned red. His fingers gripped the expensive suit until his knuckles turned white. He lowered his head and gave a bitter laugh. "Ethan, I was just looking out for you for the company's image. I'm sorry. I tried to do a good deed and messed up again. I know you looked down on the clothes I prepared. I won't do it again. I should just go." His voice trailed off weakly. Victoria watched this, her heart aching for him. She grabbed Julian, then glared at me, scolding coldly. "Ethan, are you sick? Julian didn't do anything to you. Why are you snapping at him? He was kind enough to help, and you act like an ungrateful wretch." A swarm of media poured into the venue, cutting her off. She took a deep breath, seemingly remembering the bigger picture, and suppressed her anger. She whispered, "Fine, if you don't want to wear it, don't. Let's just get through the press conference. Isn't this what you always wanted?" Thinking of a show to come, I suppressed my nausea and nodded. Once on stage, Victoria's gaze toward me softened, as if she were still the girl who loved me to the bone 10 years ago. She sat upright, smiling warmly. "I've been building this business for many years, and the person I'm most grateful to is my partner. He silently accompanied me to where I am today. Now that the company is public, I will continue to work hard and spend the rest of my life with him, protecting him." Beside her, my expression was indifferent. The platitudes felt incredibly fake. Reporters buzzed with discussion. One raised a hand boldly. "Ms. Sterling, dare we ask who your partner is? Is it the gentleman sitting next to you?" Victoria's brows relaxed, and she smiled. "Well, please let me share a video of the sweet journey my partner and I have taken. Then you'll know." She clicked a mouse. But what appeared on the screen wasn't the sweet montage of our 10 years she imagined. It was a wedding photo of Julian Rivers and Victoria Sterling, bright red and festive. I instinctively looked at Julian offstage. His eyes were full of triumph. I marveled internally. I didn't expect him to pull a move like this to block my announcement with Victoria, and I certainly didn't expect that they had already taken wedding photos without me knowing. Victoria's face changed slightly, but she quickly came up with a countermeasure. She leaned in and whispered, "Ethan, it must be a staff error. Let Julian do the announcement instead. No one knows who the partner is anyway." Julian had already jumped onto the stage, acting shy. Victoria announcing us while the company is still rising. "Aren't you spoiling me too much?" I remained quiet, consciously giving up my seat. Since Julian wanted to be on TV, I'd let him have his fill. Victoria seized the opportunity, interlacing her fingers with Julian's. She introduced him. "This is my partner, Julian Rivers." The media applauded, cheering loudly as flashbulbs popped incessantly. I smirked. The higher they climb, the harder they fall. Julian, however, suddenly decided to target me. He handed me the microphone. "Ethan, aren't you happy for Victoria and me?" Instantly, the media lenses swung toward me. Perfect. I took the microphone, but not to offer blessings. Instead, I turned to the dozens of live stream cameras I had meticulously arranged and curled my lip. I smiled. "Of course, I'm happy. You two are truly a match made in heaven." Julian looked smug, his grip on Victoria's hand tightening. Victoria, seeing I wasn't causing a scene, let out a breath of relief and nodded at me subtly, clearly thinking I was being sensible. But in the next second, my tone turned frosty, equally shameless, partners in crime. Then I pulled out my ID card and declared coldly, "I, Ethan Cole, formerly report Victoria Sterling and Julian Rivers for illegal activities." My voice blasted through the PA system, reaching every corner of the venue. Silence fell instantly. Victoria's face turned ashen. She quickly called for security. "Ethan, what nonsense are you spouting?" Security responded, "Get this unauthorized person out of here." Julian looked incredulous. "Ethan, I know you've had a crush on Victoria for a long time, but there's no need to use such clumsy methods to ruin our announcement. Do you know this is slander?" Facing the crowd's skeptical gazes, I gently pressed a button hidden in my cuff. The screen behind us, which had been displaying their wedding photo, went black for a second. It was replaced by a video that made everyone's face change. It was shaky footage. Clearly, the camera had been pinned carefully to a hidden spot on the protagonist's body. Through the distorted lens, the view showed the protagonist being shoved out of the company by hulking security guards, crying and shouting, "Why are you firing me? I worked here for 8 years. My options vest in 1 month. I have elderly parents and children to support. You can't do this." Seeing the video, Victoria's expression shifted violently. Her voice rasped as she screamed, "Turn it off. Turn it off right now." The assistant controlling the computer realized it was frozen. No matter what he did, he couldn't control the screen. He cried out, "Miss Sterling, I can't turn it off." Victoria bit her lip, shoved the assistant aside, and tried to operate it herself. But to her despair, no matter what she pressed, even unplugging the power, the video continued to play on all the screens like a ghost. Her face went pale. She panicked. The live stream cut off. I smirked. Of course, she couldn't turn it off. I controlled the equipment. My early morning effort hadn't been in vain, and she didn't know about the countless other hidden cameras I had placed. The reporters' eyes lit up. To them, corporate scandal was far more juicy and discussable than a CEO's puff piece. Instantly, the excitement in the room spiked. Linz focused on the screen. In the recording, the protagonist was knocked to the ground and dragged toward the exit. Behind the bodyguards, Victoria stood in a business skirt, watching coldly as the employee was dragged further away. She opened her mouth, sounding impatient. "Do you need to be consulted on this kind of thing? Let Julian decide." Julian usually wore the mask of nice guy. Everyone thought he was gentle. Clearly, the protagonist thought he was a lifeline, using all his strength to grab Julian's pant leg, begging, "Mr. Rivers, please talk to Miss Sterling. I'll work hard. I'll volunteer for overtime every day until 2 a.m. Is that okay? My family relies on me. I can't lose this job." The grown man's voice was breaking with sobs. It was a scene no one could watch without anger. The company employees present, who had just been watching the show, now looked furious. Some with empathy, some with fear for their own futures. The reporters went into a frenzy, urging their cameraman, "Get a clear shot. I'm writing this up immediately. This is going viral." In the video, Julian finally reacted, looking anxious. "Victoria, what do we do? Should we kick the reporters out?" Victoria nodded, about to call security. But the next second, the room erupted. Julian, looking like a two-faced hypocrite, said with feigned concern, "Having your options flow back into the company pool is the best outcome. Or do you want to lose your 13 months of severance pay too? I'm doing this for your own good." Saying this, he turned to leave with Victoria, but behind his back, he quietly made a hand signal. The protagonist was dragged into a corner by security and beaten. At the end of the video, his bloodied hand was forced to sign a separation agreement. Anyone with a shred of empathy would be enraged. The venue was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. 3 days ago, when I saw this footage, I was the same. Only then, my love-struck brain thought it was Julian's fault that he had bewitched Victoria. Now I knew better than anyone. Without Victoria's tacit approval, Julian was just an assistant. How could he have such power? Recovering from the shock, the crowd's eyes filled with anger. Several righteous journalists shouted at Victoria, "Miss Sterling, are you aware this constitutes illegal termination?" Seeing this, other media swarmed forward, peppering her with questions. "Miss Sterling, how many stock options did this employee hold? When did this happen? Please give us a direct answer." Around me, employees whispered, "Damn, the boss is finished. What about our options? It's all a scam. My options vested recently, but Julian kept saying my paperwork wasn't right. He delayed approval for a week. He probably doesn't want to pay." In chaos, I stood motionless, unsurprised. Victoria realized something. Her eyes darted around, and she slapped me across the face. "Ethan, are you crazy?" Her anger was extreme, as if she had been betrayed by her greatest love. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Julian, eyes darting, immediately grabbed my collar and shouted, "Ethan, how could you maliciously edit a video to manipulate public opinion? Even if your crush on Victoria failed, you can't do this. You'll destroy the whole company." Obviously, he wanted to throw dirty water on me and divert the outrage. I scoffed. Whether it's malicious editing isn't for you to decide. Everyone can see the truth. Amidst the argument, police sirens wailed outside. Julian's face went white. I smiled. Good thing I called the cops beforehand. Otherwise, I'd still be arguing with these two. Julian tried to argue, turning to the police. "Officers, this Ethan Cole is slandering us, spreading rumors we are—" He couldn't finish. Handcuffs clicked onto his wrists. Victoria instinctively stepped forward to protect him. The next second, handcuffs were placed on her slender wrist, too. The official announcement had turned into a farce. Reporters laughed with delight, snapping endless photos. Victoria cared about face more than anything. How could she stand such humiliation? She had come today expecting the stock to soar, to become the top female CEO. The result caught her completely off guard. Looking at me, her eyes widened, and she screamed, "Ethan, why did you betray me? I'm your wife. What good does betraying me do for you? Didn't I promise you 20% of shares?" Betrayal? Who betrayed whom? Who disregarded my safety for a pretty boy? Who handed my hard-earned credit to him? Who treated me like an outsider, demanding the company belongs solely to her wife? Now she admits she's my wife. Just moments ago on stage, she was all too eager to let Julian take the role of her partner. The reporters were confused by her words. "Ms. Sterling, isn't Mr. Rivers your husband? Why do you call yourself Mr. Cole's wife?" Seeing another juicy angle, a real-life soap opera, the reporters got even more excited. Victoria realized that saying more would only make it worse. She clamped her mouth shut. I smiled and explained to the reporters, "Ms. Sterling is joking. Julian is her husband. After all, we're already divorced." I pulled out the divorce agreement and waved it in front of Victoria, which means now that Ms. Sterling, the CEO, is in trouble. I bear no responsibility for the company. Realizing something, Julian's face turned hideous. But they didn't know this was just the beginning. Victoria stared at the divorce papers in my hand. You planned to ruin me all along, didn't you? That's why you divorced me, she asked. Her accusatory tone was ironic. I said indifferently, Victoria, you brought out the divorce papers. You suggested the divorce. She was speechless. Seeing they were no longer resisting, the police escorted them toward the exit. But unexpectedly, just as they reached the door, countless illegally fired employees rushed in, demanding answers from Julian and Victoria. Their eyes burned with hatred as they shouted, Victoria, after you fired me, my wife ran off with someone else. My mom didn't have money for medicine and died. You owe me for my mother's life. Julian, you forced me out and I couldn't pay my mortgage or car loan. I have nothing left. What am I supposed to do? Blocked by the mob, the police intentionally let Victoria face the consequences of her actions, not stopping the employees from venting their anger. The reporters were ecstatic, whispering to each other, Quick, get a clear shot of that guy leading the yelling. That's cover material. What a day. So much dirt coming out. Victoria, always concerned with her image, only frowned slightly at the scene. She said sternly, I gave you the compensation you were owed. 13 months severance is enough for you to squander. What does your lack of money have to do with me? She didn't notice Julian looking guilty. Sure enough, the fired employees' rage spiked. They rolled up their sleeves. Compensation? We haven't seen a dime. Who do you think you're fooling? Victoria froze. She turned to Julian, stunned. What is going on? Julian took a deep breath, and when he looked up, he feigned shock. Victoria, I don't know. We have to ask the finance department. I smirked. It was obvious Julian had embezzled the fund himself. After becoming VP, he had everything. Yet, he still couldn't let go of petty greed. Victoria probably never imagined she would fall because of Julian's avarice. Victoria finally realized what was happening. She took a breath. Even if there were issues with the layoffs, I knew nothing about it. It was a misunderstanding by my subordinates. I didn't break the law, right? I knew she wouldn't give up until she hit the wall. Is that so? If that doesn't count, does this? I pulled out a USB drive. Victoria's expression tightened instantly. What is that? I said quietly. Evidence of your tax evasion. Victoria looked like the strength had been drained from her. She stumbled. She looked at me as if looking at a stranger. Ethan, how can you be so cruel? Why are you framing me? Is it because of July? Julian, I really just think of him as a younger brother. The divorce was just fake. Didn't I say we'd remarry once I dealt with his parents? Or is it because I didn't give you the VP spot at the ceremony yesterday? If that's it, fine. I'll fire Julian right now. You could be the high and mighty vice president. Is that enough? See, she knew better than anyone what I wanted. But she was the stingiest person in the world toward me. Love, she wouldn't give it. Benefits, she wouldn't share a crumb. Once I craved just a bit of her attention. I hoped my years of dedication would lead to a lifetime with her. But even now, she maintained that superior attitude. Maybe years of smooth sailing as a CEO had made her forget her original intentions. I shook my head and looked deeply at Victoria. Reflect on yourself and reform. I handed the USB drive to the police. Victoria's expression turned gray. Amidst the condemnation of the crowd, the two were taken to the precinct. I stayed at the company for a long time until all the fired employees left. Before leaving, they thanked me one by one, shaking my hand. Thank you, Mr. Cole. You're a good man. I don't know how to repay you. I didn't expect a senior executive like you to understand our feelings. You're a truly good person. I kept a smile on my face, but inside I sighed. I wasn't a good person. At best, I was someone who had found their way back from the wrong path. For so long, I walked the wrong road, thinking if I kept going, I'd reach the end. Now, I wanted to change lanes to live differently. After sending the employees off, the reporters swarmed me, asking about my relationship with Victoria and why I exposed her crimes today. I said no comment in a deep voice and refused all invitations. Soon, the reporters left, muttering about me being pretentious. The huge office fell silent. I opened my phone and found my live stream. There were still people posting furious comments. I'm late. Is this that company that fired everyone illegally? This trash company should go bankrupt. Yeah, that video made me so mad. I wonder how that employee is doing. I heard he had broken bones and couldn't get out of bed for 3 months. These people are animals. And this female CEO has the nerve to market herself as an independent woman. Shameless. I watched the comments, then tapped my finger and closed the stream. The farce was over. I took my resignation letter and walked to HR. Although the whole company was in panic because of Victoria, people were still trying to do their jobs. The HR representative saw my letter and processed it without hesitation. She hesitated, then asked, "Mr. Cole, aren't you worried Miss Sterling will retaliate?" Retaliation sounded like something Victoria would do. But after this, would she have the energy? I smiled and shook my head. The HR representative didn't say more. She pulled out some tissues and a mirror, handing them to me and pointing at my cheek. Looking in the mirror, I paused. The foundation Victoria had used to cover my bruises had worn off, revealing the swollen purple skin. It looked ridiculous. No wonder everyone had looked at me with pity. But the me in the mirror, though battered, had clear eyes. I carefully wiped off the remaining makeup and thanked the HR employee sincerely. Walking out of the building, I took out my phone to contact Marcus, but he had already sent me a barrage of messages. "Dude, you really did it. Why didn't you let me back you up for something this big? Look down on me. So cool. You my idol. Dinner is on me. That two-timing woman doesn't deserve you. I'll introduce you to a gorgeous, smart woman later. Wait, bro. What's wrong with your face? Did that woman beat you? I'm coming to find you right now." Seeing the latest message, I laughed and replied, "You're 300 m away. Don't come. I'll find you later." The next second, my phone buzzed. Already here. I looked up. A car stopped in front of me. The passenger window rolled down and a hand waved. "Ethan, get in. How long has it been since the three of us got together?" The person in the passenger seat was my childhood friend, Caleb Stone. Driving was my lawyer friend, Marcus Reed. Because of me, they had become good friends, too. The three of us were like brothers until I gave up my chance to go abroad for Victoria. Back then, Caleb almost cut ties with me, saying Victoria would ruin me. Marcus didn't agree either, saying missing that chance meant missing a lifetime. But I was love-struck, only thinking of being with Victoria, fearing no hardship. During the startup phase, they had sharp tongues but soft hearts, helping me countless times. I was always grateful. Later, as the company grew, they reconnected with me. But because Victoria was controlling, calling them bad influences who hurt my efficiency, I rarely saw them. Counting back, it had been 5 years. Looking at their familiar faces, my nose stung. I pulled open the door and got in the back. As the host, dinner is on me. Anything you want. At dinner, Caleb ate and chatted idly. "So, you're really done with that woman, Victoria? No turning back?" I nodded. "Yeah, no looking back." Caleb laughed, patted my shoulder, and said, "Interested in jumping ship to our company? We need a VP. You won't mind that our pond is too small for a big fish like you, right?" My hand holding the chopsticks froze, then tightened. In the end, brothers are the most reliable. I nodded repeatedly. "Yeah, I'll work hard. I guarantee your company will outperform Victoria's." Marcus laughed and pushed up his glasses. "All right then. How about I be your legal consultant?" Caleb's eyes lit up, and he slapped Marcus on the back. "Deal. With the three brothers together, we'll be invincible." Just as we were chatting happily, my phone on the table flashed. Victoria was calling. My expression went cold instantly. Caleb and Marcus looked at me, hesitating to speak. I hung up immediately, pretending I didn't see it. But the next second, Victoria's barrage of calls started, ringing incessantly. Resigned, I answered, asking coldly, "What is it?" Victoria's voice was irritable, distorted over the line. "I'm at the police station entrance. Come pick me up." I laughed in anger. How was Victoria's brain wired? Did she think I would still be manipulated by her like before? I said gruffly, "No." Victoria got angry. It seemed to be the first time she heard me speak to her like this. Her voice sharpened. "Ethan, aren't you going too far? Do you know that just because you got jealous, the company isn't chaos?" You have to clean up this mess. Blame me. My temper flared. I had never realized Victoria was so incapable of distinguishing right from wrong. Caleb and Marcus were already looking disgruntled. Caleb grabbed the phone from my hand and said coldly, "Clean up? What mess? Let me tell you, Ethan is coming to start a business with me. He has no time for you." Marcus added coldly, "Victoria, Ethan has resigned. He has no obligation to return to the company. He is no longer your husband. If you continue to harass him, I have the right to file a lawsuit against you." Silence stretched on the other end. I thought Victoria had backed down, but a second later, her voice came through cold as ice. "Ethan, didn't I tell you not to associate with those bad influences? Why won't you listen? Is it because you listened to them that you betrayed me?" Hearing her tone, I could imagine her impatient expression. I never expected this reaction. It could be summed up in 2 words: hopeless. Too tired to argue, I hung up. Luckily, the atmosphere at the table wasn't ruined by Victoria's interruption. I had packed my luggage yesterday, originally planning to go back to my hometown to rest. But with my friend's invitation, I canceled my train ticket and went out of state to start the new venture with them. Not long after, I saw the latest news about Victoria's company. The company accountant went to jail for cooking the books, and Victoria had to pay $50 million in taxes. The class action lawsuit from the fired employees also demanded she pay out their vested options. This not only bankrupted the company, but left Victoria with debts she couldn't pay in a lifetime. Clearly, Victoria hadn't anticipated the situation would be so severe. In court, her face was pale, shaking like a leaf. Reading the news, I felt nothing, just a sense of pity. The company I poured 10 years of youth and blood into was gone. Perhaps this was just a hurdle on the road of life. After that, Victoria actually tried to find me a few times to borrow money. At first, she opened her mouth asking for $3 to $5 million. Later, she pitifully begged for a few $100 to pay gambling debts, claiming she could win it back. I never imagined Victoria would fall so low. Normally, with her connections to high society over the years, any job would have been enough for a decent life. Later, I found out that Victoria originally had some savings and wanted to flee the country with Julian. But Julian played dirty, stole all her money, and ran away alone. History repeated itself. Victoria's mental state deteriorated. She became unhinged, often grabbing strangers on the street, screaming and asking why they abandoned her. When she was lucid, she occasionally thought about finding a job. But as soon as money hit her card, the bank garnished it to pay her debts. Under the double pressure, Victoria went completely mad. Even I couldn't help but sigh. Unknowingly, a year passed. I helped Caleb's company capture a significant market share, becoming one of the most promising companies of the year. Under the spotlight, the host asked me to share my experience of success. Looking at the admiring eyes in the audience, I smiled slightly and spoke with confidence. Failure always accompanies life, but refusing to admit defeat is life's most beautiful credo. No matter what setbacks you encounter, bravely stepping forward is the beginning of success. I could see a bright future waving at me. Story complete.